Hey guys, what's up? Optimus Tom here once again, Wednesday evening, afternoon, some sort of time like that, which means it's time for another episode of In the Zone. So, I don't know guys, what's up? Done a lot of casting, done a lot of awesome stuff. They've had some pretty cool reworks and additions in this patch, such as the Spectator mode, also known as the Stalker mode, which is awesome because now I could just like look on my list of people online and be like, oh, whose game do I want to spectate today? I mean, I was actually gonna pull it up and then I realized I didn't have League of Legends open because I'm gonna try to focus on In the Zone. So, utter fail there by myself. But anyway, it's a lot of fun because not only can you like go in there and like go backwards and slow things down and like rework stuff, but you can just jump in any single game possible, and there's this like featured match thing too, so you can look all around and be like, oh, you know, like, oh, who's playing this, who's playing that. It's also really fun because you get to see like which one of your friends on your friend list are in the featured match. Like I saw DC Wasabi chilling in there as Soraka the other day on like his 1800 account, and he was just like, oh man, you got to see that? Oh, it was so good, wasn't it? I was like, no, actually I just kind of skipped over and I went to go watch like Aphromoo and Natnui and like duo queuing. He was just like, dude, you're such a dick. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know, it depends, you know. Sometimes you want to watch, you know, good people, and sometimes you want to watch people, you know. It just works out that way. But anyway, guys, besides that, they had a couple different reworks and a couple different item reworks, and a possibility of a new item coming up in a new or a more soon fourth patch. But very quickly, just want to run down a couple of the patch details in this episode before I actually get into the main focus, which is items and what they do now and how you can benefit from buying them and how it's going to affect champions that have already kind of had this established area, especially because like one of the more popular items to get on these solo middle characters, Will the Ancients, recently took a hit to the price, and so we're going to do some math on some of the other items and figure out if it's really going to be worth it once this new item comes out. But anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's see here, which one do I want to do? Because I don't think I got rid of one of my overlays yet. So I'm going to have to see. Am I going to go? Yeah, we'll just go this one. Casting overlay. Alright. Sweet. So I can get rid of these things really quick. But as you guys can see on my screen, we have the Spectator mode patch. Everybody can see patch preview. Hopefully watch this. Awesome new skins. But in addition to that, you see some buffs, you know, Alistar, some buffs at Nurse. Alistar gaining magic resist per level. Same thing with a Mumu. Cooldown reduction on a Mumu's ultimate. Annie got a bit of an interesting rework. Her Incinerate mana cost is reduced. Her base health was increased. Molten Shield got a bit of a buff. Or a little bit of a debuff, actually, with a reduction in time. But cooldown's reduced to 16 seconds from 30, so that's not bad. It's still double. Mana cost is reduced. Armor and magic resistance increased. So overall, a buff for Annie. See Blitzcrank getting the big update of updated playing against tips. Cho'Gath's move speed got increased. Dr. Mundo, a little bit of the cooldown and everything. And we see here, Graves, with a little bit of a bug fix. Aurelia getting a little bit of a buff, not a nerf, a little surprising. Bugs for Jarvan. See Jack's bugs being fixed. Kog'Maw, the slow on his Void Ooze is a little bit reduced. Lee Sin, you know, kind of stuff. But a lot of champions are getting this passive 1.25 magic resist per level, which is very interesting because now these characters are being a little bit more tanky. This includes some support characters. This includes some jungle characters. It's all pretty cool. Sivir getting a little bit of a base attack damage buff. Swain getting a bug fixed. Talon getting a bit of a buff. Taric even getting the buff here with the magic resistance. Udyr, you know, taking a little bit of a hit. Warwick taking a little bit of a hit, and Zillion, you know, for all you people that love picking up Rewind at level 1, you can't do that anymore. It's a little boo-hoo for you, but this is the main section that we are interested in for this patch right here. There's a bit of item rework that we have gone through. Deathfire's Grasp, Fiendish Codex, Morello's Evil Tome, not so much the Sunfire Cape, and Will the Ancients, getting a little bit of a reboot or overhaul in this patch. And taking a quick look at what we do have here, you know, we can see that, okay, they changed what Deathfire Grasp builds from. They reduced the cost of Fiendish Codex, trying to make it a little more appealing. Morello's Evil Tome, they changed what it actually builds from and added something to it. And Will of the Ancients, they changed the recipe, which increased the cost. So, with all these changes going around in the items, people are just basically going to be like, well, what am I going to get? What do these changes really do? I have the numbers in front of me, but what exactly, how is that affected? So what we're going to do is we're going to start right away with Deathfire's Grasp because it was the first item on the list, and it's the one that I actually did the most in-depth analysis on because a lot of people were kind of confused when they approached me about this. It's like, well, is Deathfire's Grasp, a buff? Is it a nerf? It's building for different items. It's building for a little bit more useful items, but like, what's going on with it? So right away we can notice that Deathfire Grasp, still Fiendish Codex, Kage's Lucky Pick. It's, I'm sorry, no longer a Fiendish Codex. It used to be a Fiendish Codex and a Kage's Lucky Pick. It has now been changed to a Blasting Wand and a Kage's Lucky Pick, which is a bit different because Fiendish Codex, one of those items that you didn't really want to buy. You didn't really want to get it because it does add, okay, it adds a little bit of ability power. It adds cooldown reduction, isn't terrible. It adds mana regeneration, which you don't necessarily need a bunch of because you're running runes and masteries for it. You have access to a blue buff in the middle lane. You don't necessarily need the mana regeneration on it. So it was kind of the thing where people were buying a Kage's Lucky Pick and then immediately buying a Deathfire's Grasp off the fact that Kage's Lucky Pick is a gold per 10 item. It gives you ability power, but at the same time, you can go in, continue to gain your gold, get a little bit of ability power, and then accelerate you into the rest of your item build, which is good because you could accelerate yourself into Deathfire's Grasp and just, with good farming, completely skip the Fiendish Codex. Which is, of course, what everybody basically did. It also used to add 60 ability power on top of that 12 mana regen per 5 seconds and 15% cooldown reduction. It also used to have 650 range and give this little activation damage to 30% of their current HP worth of damage plus 3.5 per 100 ability power per level. Or per ability power, not per level. They changed that a little bit. Now it's building off of a Blasting Wand in Kage's Lucky Pick. Blasting Wand, an item that you don't necessarily mind having in your inventory. Now if you want to go for a straight kind of harass and bursty build on these champions, such as Vigar, who really benefited from the Deathfire's Grasp because of his combo and his bursty potential, plus the fact that he could farm up his Q and get ridiculous amounts of ability power from it, you could now go for a Blasting Wand and be like, okay, well, Kage's Lucky Pick will give me extra money, but if I'm Vigar and I'm farming off of creeps like ridiculous amounts, using my Q to get the last hits of the ability power anyway, what if I want to apply a little bit more bursty damage on my lane opponent? What can I do? Well, I can't go for Fiendish Codex because it's going to slow me down, so let me go for the Kage's Lucky Pick. Now you have the option of waiting for like 95 extra gold or whatever it is, and getting a Blasting Wand instead. This is going to open up the fact that, okay, instead of 20-25 ability power, I can have 40 for this portion of the game. My farmings, if it stays stable, I'm going to get the item, a couple seconds slower, maybe a minute slower tops, but not really that effective because of the GP10. But still, you're going to get the item like a little bit slower, but you could possibly pick up more kills, farm better because of the extra ability power, and on top of this, on a champion like Vigar, you can pick up the Blasting Wand, deal more damage with your Q, therefore farm more minions with your Q, therefore give yourself more ability power. Also, like I said, you can harass champions down a lot easier with more ability power, just what they do. So, it could benefit you that way. So you could opt to go for a Blasting Wand over the Kage's Lucky Pick. They changed the ability power it gives in total because Blasting Wand gives more ability power than Fiendish Codex. Now it's going to be adding 80 ability power when you buy the item, as opposed to any magic per 5 that you would gain back, or mana per 5 you would gain back, no longer exists. 80 ability power flat, and the 15% cooldown reduction. The cooldown reduction is still pretty relevant, whereas the mana regeneration, like on some of these champions in the middle lane, you don't need it. Vigar's passive, if you don't remember, is basically like a Chalice of Harmony. He gains 0.75 mana for every 0.75% mana for every 1% of his mana missing, which is basically Chalice of Harmony, just like a quarter less powerful. So especially on Vigar, who I'm going to bring up a lot when talking about Deathfire's Grasp, because it's one of the items that basically Vigar got, and not exclusively Vigar, but if you saw Vigar going some other item first, something was kind of wrong with them. So, this could benefit Vigar. Also, they increased the range from 650 to 750, and they changed the ratio of its activation damage from 30% plus 3.5 to 25% plus 4% per 100 ability power. Now, this is very interesting and very tricky because the thing is, not a lot of people realize this, but Vigar's range on his skills used to synchronize very well with Deathfire's Grasp. His Q had a 650 range, which is the casting range of Deathfire's Grasp. His E, which is his cage, has a 900 range on the skill. So of course that would be the initiator. His W, which is the AoE boosh, has a 600 range, which is slightly a little less than Deathfire's Grasp. And his ultimate, 650 range, just like his Q, just like Deathfire's Grasp used to be. Deathfire's Grasp is now 750 range. Now, a lot of people might not take this into consideration a little bit, but it makes it both easier and harder for VGAR players to combo properly this way. What I'm trying to get at is, if all his skills were in the same kind of range, VGAR used to be able to lay down the stun. He would then Deathfire's Grasp, R, Q, and then W, well, beforehand, or either just go up in W and then RQ the entire combo. That would be what he would do. Now that Deathfire's Grasp has a longer range, if you start your combo with a Deathfire's Grasp, your W might not hit. You're going to have to walk closer to cast your Q and R because that's 100 units difference. So if you initiate with Deathfire's Grasp, that's walking, that's Deathfire's, you cast your E. That's 900 range. You walk 150 to use your Deathfire's Grasp. You walk another 100 to use your R and Q, and then you have to walk another 50 to use your W. So some people might be like, okay, well, increased range can't necessarily be a bad thing. It can be if you don't play your VGAR smart. If you play them the same way you used to play, that's fine. But for people that are getting used to smart casting or just smart caster things altogether, you're not going to be able to get in like the same kind of range. If you just smart cast your Deathfire's Grasp and then smart cast the rest of your skills, VGAR is going to have to take that time to walk. So now what you're going to have to do is walk into range before you smart cast your combo. Otherwise, you're going to mess it up. So everybody who had a rhythm of VGAR, players like Nijaki who play VGAR like it's almost not exclusively, but they're very well known for playing this VGAR character, you're going to have to get a new rotation down in your just how you approach champions after the stun. You are going to have to judge your own range and walk into it before hitting a couple buttons and smart casting your combo away. Otherwise, it's going to mess it up for you because of this awkward pausing in between, and you're not going to hit your W. So if you initiate with your W and then combo down, you will be fine because W has a 600 range, which is underneath everything else in your combo. But if you used to get away by not using that combo on VGAR, it's not going to work anymore. So you have to be very, very careful with this. It's one of those kind of little things that they increased the range. They thought it was a really good thing. You know, some people use it as the killing blow, which I don't necessarily like, because if you're dealing a percentage of their current HP, it makes more sense and more damage to do it first, because that's when they're going to have the most HP. Therefore, you're going to be dealing the most damage. That then pays way for your ultimate, which deals the second most damage, your Q, which deals the least amount of damage, and then your W, which will deal somewhere in between the damage of your Q and your ultimate. So very, very interesting to see that if some of these VGAR players start missing their combos or not dealing maximum damage, this is going to be why, and it's because of that little 100 range change. Not necessarily a bad thing altogether, because it lets him use it from farther away if it's off cooldown and he needs to use it to like catch someone who's chasing. So it's not a bad thing at all. It's just something that VGAR players might not be expecting if they don't update their rotations or do it properly every single time by leading it with the W because of that delay in casting. So if you W, then Deathfire's Grasp, R, and Q, and the whole little like whoosh, 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 and all those little 3 projectiles look like they're shooting all at the same time, and then the W goes boosh, and you just completely annihilate the champion, you are A-okay. Just make sure you have that casting rotation down pat. Otherwise, you know, you're going to wind up being in a little bit of a world of pain. So, besides that, the damage is a little bit different. It has a lower base ability power that you're going to be granted, a higher base ability power than you're going to be granted before. Before, it used to be 60 plus 30 plus 3.5% per 100 ability power per level. Right now, it is 80 plus 25 plus 4% per ability power per level, which means, or 100 ability power per AP, whatever. You're going to be getting, every 100 ability power adds 4% to that damage. So it's interesting to note because on a champion like VGAR who's farming up his Q, you're going to be closer to that 100 ability power as soon as you get the Deathfire's Grasp, which means you'll be dealing 29%. Because of that extra 20 ability power. Or if you have runes and masteries and like a Doran's ring, you're going to be well above that 100 ability power for that 4% threshold. So you'll be dealing 29% damage, which isn't that far away from the 30%. But if you do a little bit of math, it starts to look like Deathfire's Grasp took a little bit of a nerf. At 100 ability power, you'll be doing 29% with the new Deathfire's Grasp. Old Deathfire's Grasp, you did 33.5% at Diamond 100. It's a little bit easier to achieve the 100 ability power now, but, you know, it wasn't difficult before to do it, especially once you started going into your later game item build, like a death cap and things like that would grant ridiculous amounts of ability power. So if you go down the tree, 200 ability power, you do 33% now as opposed to 37% before. Okay, that's 4%. That's, you know, 100 ability power in the case of the new item. All right, well, let's look at this. 300 ability power used to be 40.5%, and now it's only 37. Well, that's 3.5. You're gaining on them by 0.5 every level, or every 100 ability power. 400 ability power, it's 41 now. It used to be 44. 500 ability power, 47.5, whereas you're doing 45 now. So not until 700 ability power does the new Deathfire's Grasp outclass the potential damage that the old Deathfire's Grasp used to do. At 600, you would be doing what? 51% as opposed to 49. And then at 700 ability power, you would be dealing 54.4, and then you would finally be doing, no, you'd be doing 53. So at 700 ability power, you just barely start to reach the class of it. 800 and 900 ability power, you start to match and outclass it. So if you look at it from that standpoint, a lot of people are going to say Deathfire's Grasp is a lot better in the later game because the percentage of ability power is scaling higher into the later stages. It might be easier to get that ability power early on, but you're still dealing a whole 1% less damage at 100 ability power. Whereas, you know, you might only have like 80 ability power when you first got it in the old game. Now you could get it at starting with that 100 ability power. You're still dealing 1% less damage than the old Deathfire's Grasp did. And now you may think, well, okay, well, later on in the game it should scale properly. Yeah, but you're going to have to combat this 3.5 or 4% ratio that it was given over you. So you're not going to really outclass the old Deathfire's Grasp in damage till you hit 900 ability power. So if you look at it, it's a nerf. That's what the reducing the price by 10 gold gets you. It gets you statistically a nerf, which is, you know, if you want a whole verdict on the item, not much has changed, to be completely honest. But you have to keep in mind, you know, you can get the Kage's Lucky Pick and go for the more gold first. You can get the Blasting Wand and go for more burst. But the better end game doesn't exist that a lot of people were talking about on this Deathfire's Grasp item. And they'll be like, oh, 4% per 100 ability power, it's bound to be better. No, because of how they took away the 5% initial damage. So now you're not going to outclass the damage the old Deathfire's Grasp used to do. But you could get earlier burst and more ability power quicker. So therefore, you'll only be suffering by like 1% at the 100 ability power level and 3.5% at the 200 ability power level. But your skills will be dealing more damage because you will have more ability power quicker. So the other skills in your character build will deal more damage quicker because of this. But the Deathfire's Grasp itself is not nearly doing as much work as the item used to be. So reduce the cost by 10 gold, nerf the item a little bit. Very sneaky of you, Riot, because it looked like it was a lot better. You also have to keep in mind that by getting a Blasting Wand first as your item as opposed to a Fiendish Codex, you open up a lot of potential once again for your abilities to do more damage than the item, which is what I think Riot was intending to do. The item used to be gotten as a burst thing, and that's about it. But by adding more ability power and making the items that you need to make this item a little bit more useful, Riot was hoping to make the item to be something that you would slowly progress your character into, and then upon buying it, you get this ridiculous bonus of burst damage. So they nerfed it a little bit. So all in all, the item balances itself out in the end. I don't think it's too much of a nerf or too much of a hit to it at all. So keep on playing Vigor, keep on getting your Deathfire's Grasp. Does this open it up to other champions? I've heard people talk about like Deathfire's Grasp Ari and stuff like that. I probably wouldn't. I mean, looking at the rest of the items we'll be talking about, and especially the new item coming out in the next patch, I believe, or whenever Riot decides to dust it off and kind of just slip it into the game for us there, there's a lot of different item choices that would benefit you more than a Deathfire's Grasp, especially because they use similar items to get to that goal. So we'll talk about those in a little bit, though. So Deathfire's Grasp, I'd keep it on Vigor. Wouldn't really use it on anyone else. Maybe use it on Poppy if you have to play that champion, because the champion shouldn't exist. I hate that champion. Just go die, literally. Get removed from the game, but whatever. Besides that, those two champions, I would still see Deathfire's Grasp being gotten on. Wouldn't necessarily see it on anybody else. So taking a quick look back at these patch notes anyway. We have the Fiendish Codex cost reduced. This doesn't really do anything besides overall change how much money these items you're going to be making Fiendish Codex into will do. Next item we're going to talk about is Morella's Evil Tome. Morella's Evil Tome didn't really do anything except for cost 20 less gold in this patch, which is pretty good. Its stats are the same, so you still get 75 ability power, you still get the 12 mana regen per 5, you get 20% cooldown reduction, but now it has an active ability. Grievous Wounds, which decreases the amount of healing by 50% for 8 seconds. The 8 seconds on this thing is ridiculous. 8 seconds of reducing healing is absolutely insane. You just think about this thing on characters like that are prevalent in the gameplay right now, like Jungle Mundo, or AD carries in the bottom lane packing heal. This substitutes as an Ignite. On top of the fact that if you're a middle ability power champion, you already are packing Ignite. But besides those characters, this opens up the item to those support characters in the bottom lane. Why? Well, it gives them a gold per 10 item in Kage's Lucky Pick, which you need to make it, and lets you, you take the GP10 item. After that, you can buy the Fiendish Codex if you absolutely must, but it's not necessary. You can just go for that Kage's Lucky Pick, go for your Shirelias, keep the Kage's Lucky Pick as a little bit of a buff to your spells. Like on a Lulu, that's adding decent damage because their ratios are insane. On a Janna, same thing. It's also giving you a little bit extra shield to help out your carry. So getting you extra gold and buffing your skills in the slightest amount of bit. Kage's Lucky Pick, you normally overlook it on a support character because you'd rather go for something like a Heart of Gold that becomes a Randuin's or a Locket of the Iron Solari. You go for Philosopher's Stone because you get health and mana regeneration, which you'll need in that lane as a support character, spamming heals, spamming shields, spamming CC to keep your carry alive, and you would turn that into a Shirelia's Reverie, something useful, something very useful for your entire team. Morella's Evil Tome, it's more useful for specific characters. I don't know what support character I would say should get it. I mean, Lulu's the first one to pop into my head because she could benefit a lot from the ability power ratio on it. Not to mention the cooldown reduction and everything for her ultimate. Janna kind of pops into my mind too, but I still kind of think maybe Janna would be better off with that Heart of Gold for a little bit more sustain and then going for a Locket or a Randuin's or something. But because of her ability to disposition people, picking up Morella's on her might not be a bad idea because she's basically going to keep people away from the fight and not necessarily, be jumping into the middle of it to activate a Randuin's Omen or something. So this could be an alternate route for you. Plus, it's buffing the shield. The shield has a ridiculous ability power ratio. Buffing that shield with, 75 ability power could mean life or death for your carry. If they're running an Ignite in the bottom lane, you can counteract this by getting Morella's Evil Tome and using your own Grievous Wounds, which will give the same kind of debuff Ignite gives, which reduces healing by 50%. This can combat heal lanes in the bottom lane. Those lanes where you take a sustain support character and match them with a carry who has heal. Then the sustain support gets exhaust, and that's your gimmick in the bottom lane. So you could go after champions and yada yada yada. That's what you do. This could combat this towards the team fighting stage of the game, which makes those carries with sustain heals a little bit worse and makes the heal skill overall a little bit worse on the carry, although it's still going to benefit the rest of the team the same kind of way. You could do this in the bottom lane, and all of a sudden the sustain support in the later stages of the game might not be as good as it would be anymore. You could get this item on aggressive supports, like I said, a Janna or a Lulu, someone who doesn't have that sustain in them, and you could just combat the sustain character in the later stages of the game by nullifying or very, very greatly diminishing the normal advantage they have over the type of support character that you have chosen for that matchup. So overall, Morella's Evil Tome, a lot better because it opens it up to so many different roles and so many different situations. I already talked about how the GP10 item at Kage's Lucky Pick gives you ability power, which is great for both supports and middle champions because you'll be getting gold and you'll be getting a benefit to your skills in the additional ability power. Grievous Wounds versus 80 bot lane. I've already talked about that. It's absolutely insane. Other than that, we've had one more item that got a little bit of a tweak in the patches, and that was Will of the Ancients. Now it's going to be building out of a blasting wand and a hextech revolver, which means that it's also going to be costing a little bit more gold. That is 2,500 up from 2,100, which is the most significant gold increase we've seen out of all these items thus far. So that means that, all right, well, first off, this item, it's still as powerful as it used to be. 80 ability power in total. That's 50 ability power on the actual item and 30 from the aura it's going to be granting, in addition to the 20% spell vamp that it gives in an aura to everybody else on your team. But, you know, the 400 gold increase means it's not as easy as an item to get in the middle lane, which is where a lot of these champions, such as Cassiopeia and Ari, and all these kind of not really like sustainy, bursty, ability power champions were using it. They were, you know, getting this Will of the Ancients or getting a Hextech Revolver and then building it into a Will of the Ancients and sustaining themselves. Kenan's another champion that used to get this very quick Will of the Ancients in his lane just to sustain himself. Now they're not going to be able to buy it as quickly. You know, 400 gold is a significant increase. If you think about it, you know, creep waves will give, you know, somewhere between 50 and 100 gold. That means you have to farm up, you know, 5 to 6 more, maybe 7 more creep waves if you get all your last hits perfectly, you know, 5 if you don't, more up towards like the 7 creep wave range, just to buy this item, which means it's going to be a lot more time, and that's another possible level and a half, or even 2 levels in the lane that you're going to be sticking around without this support or the sustain item in your inventory. You could still go for the Hextech Revolver first, which is absolutely fine, but this may promote more of like a Hextech into Dorans and then Will of the Ancients later kind of meta. Or it could also prompt you to buy other items. You can still get the Hextech Revolver quickly, which is, you know, not really that bad because they nerfed Hextech before. It's down to 12% spell vamp, so it's not necessarily the powerhouse that it used to be, but it is still a decent item, and it's for its decent price. 1,200 altogether, you know, for the 2 amplifying tomes, making it into a Hextech Revolver, giving you a little bit of ability power and a little bit of spell vamp. It's not terrible. But the only thing is now, instead of just buying another amplifying tome and then upgrading it, you have to buy a blasting wand, which we already talked about blasting wand before and how it could benefit Deathfire's Grasp users. But you have to buy that blasting wand, which costs, you know, almost double of what your old amplifying tome used to cost. And then the recipe, they reduced the cost by a little bit to make it an even number, but it's still that 400 gold more. And like I said, 400 gold is a lot of creep waves and a lot of big experience differential, so that maybe, you know, this later slot for Will of the Ancients in the game might not be as effective as getting it super early on. You might wind up seeing, you know, like these 2 ability power champion teams waiting to get their Will of the Ancients into like perfect synchronization and going for maybe a different item build. I don't know. I personally have continued getting Will of the Ancients on my Ari builds, on my Vladimir builds, and characters that would usually use it, and I don't seem to see too much of a difference. But at the same time, you know, if you're picking up kills and you're getting great ganks from your junglers, you're not going to see a huge difference. What it's doing is basically it's basically buying an extra Oracle's Elixir for your team and losing it at that point, because that's how much extra gold it costs. You're not going to see sudden effects of it right away, but as the game goes on and all of a sudden, you know, you're a little bit behind the opposing character who didn't get it, because of your gold you spent on it, you could be like, well, hold on a second. He got like a death cap like 10 minutes before me because I went Will of the Ancients first, and he just went Hextech Revolver and then went into you know, death cap. What's going on? And you could pretty much see why in that little bit of a gold differential. So what that item, not necessarily terrible right now. It's still pretty much the powerhouse that it used to be. You just have to wait a little longer to get it. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm like, oh, is this going to cause dilemmas to be like, oh, man, should I get a Will of the Ancients now? I don't know. It's costing so much gold. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. It's always still going to be worth it to get the Will of the Ancients, especially with the double ability power on your team. It's just more of like you have to wait a little bit longer, and Riot's trying to see what that's going to impose on the rest of the metagame. If you stop to get an extra Doran's ring, that used to be basically 75 more gold than Will of the Ancients cost now. If you stop to get another Doran's blade, Doran's ring now, and then go for Will of the Ancients, you're piling on, you know, 475 extra gold instead of just that 75 extra gold. So that's actually a whole nother Doran's ring. So you have to keep this kind of stuff in mind, where it could, you know, slowly change things, but Will of the Ancients is probably still going to be one of those staple items on those characters in the middle. But with the gold increase on this item, it prompts, you know, with the next patch up and coming, we'll get Varus and we'll get this new item that could possibly make that Will of the Ancients money change just a little bit too costly. We don't have it here. I have to do right up here. Athene's Unholy Grail. Look at this item. Look at it. It's so cool. It's like this. It's like this, like red chalice full of like ethereal, energetic blood or something. I don't even know. The thing looks awesome. It makes from a Fiendish Codex, an Amplifying Tome, and a Chalice of Harmony. So now Chalice of Harmony, 380 extra gold too for the recipe. Now Chalice of Harmony is not this kind of quote-unquote dead end item that people usually get for magic resistance to get their mana regeneration on characters that are very bursty and spell spammy. And now it's not a dead end item. You can turn it into something. It's awesome because this item gives that 80 ability power like Will of the Ancients, 40 magic resistance, mana regeneration, on top of cooldown reduction, on top of this passive bounty that when you get a kill or assist, you restore 12% of your maximum mana. On top of that, you have the passive of Chalice of Harmony. So what we have here is an item that all of a sudden these casters in the middle lane, altogether this item costs 2,950 gold. So it's 450 more than Will of the Ancients, which is the recipe and like a potion. So it's not too much more expensive. That same little delay between when you used to get your Will of the Ancients and when you're now going to be getting your Will of the Ancients. So if you're already getting a little skeptical about that, now you can get skeptical about, is this Athene's Unholy Grail going to be worth it? The passive bounty in and of itself is almost ridiculous. Like it's like, okay, what ability power champion wouldn't want to go into a fight, blow all their spells on somebody, and then gain 12% of their mana back to burn through like almost another full rotation of their spells while still being participated in this team fight? What middle champion wouldn't want 40 magic resistance against the other enemy ability power champion in the middle, so that you have this ridiculous amount of magic resistance advantage against them? Especially characters like Ahri, who are going to be running a HP per level seals, so that HP and magic resistance, as you saw way before in another In the Zone, we talked about effective HP. That is so much more HP you can absorb in damage from the enemy spellcaster in the middle lane. It actually is pretty absurd. Other than that, you have the benefit of Chalice of Harmony. So the spammy characters like Cassiopeia, the spammy characters like Ahri, those characters who want to get Chalice of Harmony right away anyway, like a Galio. Galio with Chalice of Harmony, is pretty annoying. He has ridiculous magic resistance. It translates into ability power. Plus, he gets more mana for his spells. He picks up a blue buff. It's pretty silly. Now imagine this Galio goes into a team fight, uses his ultimate, blows a full spell combo, and picks up an assist or a kill. Gets 12% extra mana back, could do it all over again. That means Bulwark for his allies. That means slowing down with Resolute Smite, Righteous Gust to speed them up and chase them, on top of all the damage you could deal. Now all of a sudden, you've tagged everyone your ultimate. Galio gets all this mana back when these kills and assists go down. It's ridiculous. 40 magic resistance on that thing, that's giving Galio an extra 10 ability power because 50% gets translated into his ability power. That's an extra 10 off of the 10 you're getting from Chalice of Harmony already. It's stupid. Or I'm sorry, Chalice of Harmony is giving what, 30? I'm sorry, I completely forgot about that. So double checking this real quick. Chalice of Harmony is giving you 30, so that's 15. You're getting an additional 5 altogether off of Athene's Unholy Grail. I'm sorry. I got excited, jumped the gun. I was like, oh yeah, 20 and 40. I'm like, oh, I got this bad. I didn't have that time. But you're getting, this extra magic resistance, and you're getting this extra ability power because of it. That's 80 ability power you're also getting because you have a Fiendish Codex and an Amplifying Tome. This Fiendish Codex, you don't necessarily want to get it, but if you're Galio and you pick up an Amplifying Tome and a Chalice of Harmony, and then you save up like 1,500, you could go back and you can get an Athene's Unholy Grail. Like, all of a sudden, you have absurd magic resistance on your Galio build. You have absurd mana regeneration to spam your absurd spells against this character that really can't hurt you in the middle lane. If you go up against, like, a Brand or somebody in the middle lane as Galio already, you just completely poop all over him. Now imagine you could get in there and get ridiculously more increased magic resistance, spam those spells that absolutely devastate him even more, and then deal more damage because of the extra magic resistance and ability power. It's stupid. Like, Brand's going to have to get the same item against you just to combat it. It's stupid. Or if Brand's going to be going for Will of the Ancients, you're getting the item at almost the same time. Which is pretty goofy. It's pretty goofy all in all. So Galio, of course, is going to get this because Chalice is no longer a dead-end item that you have to get because you're Galio. This is also going to be, interesting to see what kind of burst casters are going to get this. Like I said, are Ari and Cassiopeia going to go for a Will of the Ancients, or could they get a Chalice of Harmony and a Hextech Revolver and then get these items in different sequences? Is Vigar going to want to get this item over Deathfire's Bath? Spoiler alert, probably not, because he already has his passive, but still, could Vigar make use of this item? Could he make use of Morella's Evil Tome now? Would champions like Gragas, that people may not play as much in the middle lane anymore, be able to benefit ridiculous amounts from this item because of the mana regeneration and the amount of damage their spells already deal, on top of getting ability power and more mana to spamless spells? Could we see a resurgence of these champions like Gragas? As I giving the Brand example before, could we see, characters like Brand or Annie with Annie's little bit of tweaks and changes that we saw? Is Annie going to be resurging again now that she has an item that can benefit her bursty nature but still protect her and make up for the fact that, in team fights, what happens to Annie? Annie, okay, in the laning phase, for all you people that may not have played Annie before because she was a little bit worse than Brand, and, there's other characters to play, Annie in the lane has her Q, which when you last hit a minion with a Q, it refunds its mana cost. That's awesome. But because of this, Annie notoriously had low mana. That would mean that in a team fight, you could Tibbers, you could use your skills once or twice, and then you'd pretty much be really, really low on mana, and Annie won't be able to do much besides run Tibbers around the fight and occasionally use her skills. You probably could get 1, maybe 2 stuns off in a fight, and that was absolutely it. Now that Annie has an item that can benefit her ability power-wise and not be a dead-end Chalice, she could get that Chalice, so early on in the game when her spells deal ridiculous damage by themselves off of runes and masteries alone, you can get a Chalice of Harmony. This gives you survivability in the lane because Annie has low HP and has, she's very gankable. Getting this magic resistance will protect you against that enemy AP in the middle. Then you can turn it into an Athene's Unholy Grail and really benefit your entire skill set by giving you cooldown reduction for more Tibbers and more spell spam, mana regeneration so that you can just absolutely regain all the mana you've been casting in these fights, and he bursts someone down in a team fight like a carry, she gets 12% of her mana back all of a sudden. That's 80 more ability power in Athene's Unholy Grail with that cooldown reduction, with the mana coming back, with the mana regeneration from Chalice of Harmony, that she can just turn around and do it again to another champion. This is absolutely a Galio item. This is absolutely a must-buy on Annie. These two characters, I think, are going to be huge because of Athene's Unholy Grail. The only thing is having to farm to it. Comparatively, it doesn't seem like that bad of an item cost. 80 ability power, the only other thing that gives that is Will of the Ancients, and we've already talked about how that's getting changed in this patch. But the other items that add more than this are Zanya's Hourglass, which is 3,100, and Rybodon's Death Cap, which is 3,600 gold. So if you think about it, like these power tiers of 300 to 400 gold increments that kind of make, this is this item, this is this item, this is that, and it kind of scales like this little bit of a power creep kind of thing. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see, are these characters going to be used more because of these items? Are these items going to be used on other characters more because of how they are, or is it just going to prompt this entire meta to start changing a little bit, which might be something that Riot is trying to do with us? I don't know, guys. I don't know about you, but with these patch changes and with this Athene's Unholy Grail, I'm going to be playing a buttload of Annie, I think. I absolutely love Galio. I'll be playing a buttload of Galio. Ari, I'm going to try it on her. I love playing Ari. I'm a middle champion. I love playing middle champions. So I'm going to try it on them and see how it works. Annie, I think, is going to be a powerhouse after this. Whoa, completely forgot this point. Going all the way back to Morella's Evil Tome with the Grievous Wounds effect. Grievous Wounds is nothing to be underestimated. There are already talks about people getting an Executioner's Calling in the top lane for the dot debuff it gives on top of Grievous Wounds. You get Executioner's Calling, it's the one item in the game that hasn't taken a hit to the the life vamp nerf, the life leech nerf. Vampiric Scepter, Wriggle's Lantern, all these sustaining items got the nerf, and now you don't see them as much anymore in the top lane. You see more Doran's Blade favored builds. It's like Bloodthirsters on characters like Riven, and they're super dominant. Take those characters that get a lot of, spell vamp and run heal in the top lane, like Vladimir. You take a Bruiser, and you put Executioner's Calling on it. 17% lifesteal on that. The debuff deals damage. The debuff reduces healing grievous wounds on them. It's insane. Try it. If you're playing like Bruiser versus Bruiser top lane, and just get an Executioner's Calling. It's insane. No, it's one of those items that's a little situational right now, but the grievous wounds makes it ridiculous on top of the fact that it has like the highest sustain in the game for life leech at that level. 17% is ridiculous. You don't get that until you get like Bloodthirster. You don't have it anymore. It adds a critical strike chance. So on characters like Gangplank or Tryndamere, who used to get like Avarice Blades and like benefit from the benefit a lot from like the built-in critical strike in your Runes and Masteries build, like the Mastery build that gave 4% random critical strike. This, Executioner's Calling will add random critical strike back into it, so now Gangplank's parlay is not only going to sustain him a lot better, but have that random crit proc that used to make Gangplank ridiculous in the top lane. So try that out. Well, first off, try out Executioner's Calling, and second off, don't discount Grievous Wounds. I already talked about it in detail about how beneficial it can be in that bottom lane and how beneficial it could be in the later stages of the game if you are a non-sustained support facing off against a sustained support. So absolutely awesome stuff coming in all of these, and it's really cool to be my first entry in my In the Zone notebook. It's like I'm in class. You know, all the maths and all the statistics that I do will now be forever kept in my In the Zone journal. So please look forward to me filling up this red book, by next episode, depending on what we talk about. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this week's episode of In the Zone. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have had, researching and going to the finer points of these items that are now reworked or now forthcoming. Get out there, play around with Spectator mode. It is awesome, absolutely cool. You can stalk your friends, you can stalk any pro players you have on your list, and you can stalk Optimus Tom, so you too can watch his Amumu go for a Leviathan Magi Sword of the Occult build as a support character in the bottom lane. Because I don't know how many people were messaging me about that yesterday, but I had like 4 or 5 different people being like, why are you going Snowball Amumu support character in the bottom lane? It's like, shh, don't worry, I'm carrying Bausch. Don't worry about it, guys. But it's a lot of fun just to play around with Spectator mode. So you guys should try it out sometime. Spectate me, whatever. I don't care. You're probably gonna watch my Optimus Tom and ELO anyway. So feel free to jump in my rank game and be like, "Oh man, he's doing terrible. Why are you so bad, Optimus Tom?" I get it all the time in the comments anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, go out there, play around with this. Next week, we're probably going to have Varus. We're probably going to have Athene Unholy Grail. Probably going to do a lot on Varus. If you guys haven't checked it out already, ggc.leaguecraft.com, part of the ggChronicle community over here. A lot of awesome stuff we did at PAX East. We did a full review on Hecarim before he came out. That was from Monte Cristo. I personally did a full review on Varus, so you guys can check that out if you haven't gotten your fill on waiting for Varus yet. It's an in-depth kind of guide look. It not only goes over what his skills do and what, the ratios are and everything, but I flesh out a little bit of a guide how to play him as a range AD character in the bottom lane. So you should check that out to prep yourself for Varus, because once Varus comes out, I'm telling you, he's pretty much set for competitive play. He's probably going to be the next cog boss. So you guys pay attention for Varus. We'll probably do a little bit more of him next week on In the Zone if I can't think of something else or get a really cool replay for it. So study up on Varus, voyeur mode, full on, watch Optimus Tom play, watch all the rest of the pros play and everything like that. But other than that, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. I want frozen yogurt, so I'll see you guys later.
And let it lie on the ground. Every time I pick you up, you drag me down. You took my world and spun it upside down.